Adventures of Prince Ahmed was the first full-length animated film in the history of the cinema. It was made by Lotte Reiniger between 1923 and 26 in Potsdam, Germany. For the past 20 years or so, she has been working in her studios in Barnet. Here she has produced one after another of her unique silhouette films, the technique of which she was the pioneer. Since Miss Reiniger made Prince Ahmed, she has made over 40 films, all using simple variations of the basic technique. And simple though this technique might seem, it is in the subtleties of its application that its success is achieved.
Here I am to tell you about what I shall have to do to make a silhouette film. First of all, select an idea which I like to do very much, for the work takes a very long time. Let us make Papageno.
The chosen character, Papageno, has first to be fitted into the story, and for this the various sets and figures are designed. These eventually complete the final storyboard, the blueprint for the film, showing the different sequences which will later be further broken down into the particular movements of the figures. Despite the intricate nature of her specialized technique of filming, the importance of the story must not be underestimated in Miss Reiniger's work. The magic of the fairy tale has always been her greatest fascination, yet her own interpretations attain a unique quality. Once it is decided how Papageno will look, Miss Reiniger can begin to cut out the figure. First his head with its feathery headdress, for Papageno is a bird catcher and must look like a bird in order to carry out his profession. The original film of Papageno, taken from the sequence in Mozart's opera she made in 1935. The figures she cuts out and constructs were originally inspired by the puppets used in traditional Eastern shadow theaters, of which the silhouette film is the logical conclusion. And nowadays, much of her time is devoted to staging shadow theater plays. Yet it is remarkable how little the technique has changed. The materials, the black cardboard, the scissors remain the same as for her earliest films, the first of which she made in 1917. And then the whole figure and his costume are cut out in individual sections. The number of separate pieces does of course depend on the amount of movement that is required of a figure. Papageno, being a particularly important character, has particularly complex construction. First, small holes are pierced in relevant points. All these limbs and pieces of costume are joined together with small wire hinges. The hinges are intricately tied, for it is essential that they successfully withstand the constant movement demanded of them. When such a hinge is subject to excessive use, it is weighted with flat pieces of lead, which helps also, of course, to keep the figure flat, for otherwise it might warp under the heat of the camera lights. And then the whole figure is rolled out flat. Despite the speed of their construction, Miss Reiniger will continue to have a strange affection for each of her figures, an understandable affection, for in their flexibility they have almost human characteristics of movement. His movements are checked, standing, sitting, kneeling, hopping, and so on. Now he can be filmed, and for this he must be placed on the animation table.
This is the trick table. If you don't have such a thing at home, you take your best dining table, cut a hole into it, put a glass plate over it, and over the glass plate some transparent paper, and then you put some light on from underneath. And when you switch the other light in the room out, then you see with joy that your figure now is a real silhouette.
To make the figure move, it must be placed in the correct position and a shot taken. The figure is then moved a fraction further and a second shot is taken, and so on, so that with much patience and concentration, the figure moves more and more. The camera shutter opens again and again, and the final result will be the figure moving across the screen. There is, of course, a great deal more to it than this. For example, among the specialized techniques which may have to be employed is the possibility of the figure turning. Moving as seen before, it is first necessary to mark his position. The next step is to turn his head. Take a picture, and then gradually the limbs are turned one by one and pictures taken. He can now proceed to move in the opposite direction. Alternatively, one can cheat a little by turning the figure as another figure passes in front of him.